Section 5.6 is graphing inequalities with two variables. When we want to graph, we're going to have to put in slope-intercept form. We have to get it in the form of y equals mx plus b. So in equation 1a, we are going to have to solve for y. So we're going to subtract 3x on both sides. So that's negative y is less than negative 3x plus 2. The coefficient in front of y is negative 1. And we have to get, it has to be a positive y. So we're going to have to divide everything by a negative 1. Now don't forget, we have to use things that we've learned in the past. When we divide by a negative number, what do we do with the inequality? We flip it, so it becomes a greater than. Negative 3x divided by negative 1 is a positive 3x. 2 divided by negative 1 is a negative 2. Now this equation is in slope-intercept form. We remember how to solve. Remember, m is the number in front of x. So what is our slope? What is our slope? 3. And when we go to slope, you always have to have it in a fraction, so we're going to put that 3 over 1. Your b, which stands for your y-intercept, is negative 2. That is the ordered pair 0, negative 2. Make sure you identify all of those things, just like you had to do in Chapter 4. When we go to graph, you use straight edge. Always identify, label your x and y axis. Plot 0, negative 2. Now we're going to go up 3 over 1, up 3 again, over 1, up 3 again, over 1. Or, to get some points on the other side, we would go down and backwards. Okay, now, here's some new stuff. If it's a greater than or a less than, our line will be a dotted line. If we have a greater than or equal to or a less than or equal to, it will be a solid line. Okay? So by looking, let's go back and look. This is a greater than symbol, so are we going to have a dotted line or a solid line? A dotted line. So using your straight edge, you line up your ID and dot it, dashed or dotted. Now there's going to be shading involved. Okay, so when we have an inequality, we will be shading. If it's a greater than or a greater than or equal to, we are going to shade above the line. If it's a less than or a less than or equal to, we will shade below the line. So in this problem, it's a greater than symbol. And so that would be, we would shade above the line. And this side is above. So lightly with your pencil, you can just shade like that. In example 1b, x minus 1 is greater than y. What's wrong with this equation? It's flipped around. We need to pick it up and flip it to where it's y. It's in the form of y equals mx plus b. Y is on the wrong side, so I'm just going to pick this whole thing up and flip it around. Now when I do that, I also have to flip the inequality around. Now make sure, look, it's pointing to y, it's still pointing to y. Now, is it already in the slope-intercept form? Yes, it is. What is my slope? 1. It's the number in front of x. So my slope is 1 over 1. My b, my y-intercept is -1, which is the ordered pair 0, -1. So I'm going to plot 0, -1. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Or down and backwards. More points you put, the better your graph is going to be. Is this going to be a solid or a dotted line? Dotted. Now go back up here to the equation. It is a less than symbol. Less than means I shade below. What is below? Below. Okay, example 2a, x plus 5y is less than 10. We have to solve this equation for y. So we're going to have to do what first? Subtract x, correct? Got to get it in slope-intercept form. So we subtract x. So that's 5y is less than or equal to -x plus 10. Then we're going to divide by 5 on everything. Now be very careful here, guys. First off, did I divide by a negative number? No, so I don't flip the symbol, so it stays less than or equal to. This is where some people get wrong, mistake. There is not a number right there in front of x. It is understood to be a 1. In this case, it's understood to be a -1. So we write it as -1/5 x. And then 10 divided by 5 is 2. So there it is in slope-intercept form. For some reason, people love to write that as 5x, -5x. It's not -5x. Don't move the 5 up top. Your slope is -1 over 5. Your b, which is your y-intercept, is 0, 2. Plot 0, 2. Now your slope is -1 over 5. Do I put the negative with the 1 or with the 5 or with both? Which one? Do I put it with both? No. You either put it with the 1 or the 5. I'm going to put it with the 1, so I'm going to go down 1 and to the right 5. Do it again. What if I want some points on the other side? Then I would put the negative with the 5 and go up 1, backwards 5. Is this going to be a solid or a dotted line? Solid. Oops, I'm off 1 point.
If you only had like 3, if you only had like 3 of those.
That's fine. And this is a less than, so do we shade above or below? Below. And this is below. Okay? Y'all do example 2b. Make sure that you solve for y correctly. You had to subtract x. And then you had to divide by a -1, and when you divided by a -1, you flip the symbol. So, check your answer when you solve for y. Do you have y is greater than or equal to x minus 3? Do you have that? We plot 0, -3. Going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Solid line, and then it's greater than or equal to, so do we shade above or below? above, which is above. Very obvious to see what is above and below. Example 3a. 3x plus 5 is less than 14. What's the problem here?
X is on.
Go ahead. There is no y. So we have no choice but to solve for x. So we're going to have to think back. It's one of those special graphs. When we have, do y'all remember what x equals is a vertical and y is equal to is a horizontal line? Do y'all remember that? Think back to chapter 3 and 4. So we're going to have to solve for x. So we're going to subtract 5 on both sides. So that's 3x is less than 9. Divide by 3. So x is less than 3. So that is a special graph. It's a vertical line at 3. Now, is it going to be a solid or a dotted line? Dotted. Okay, so it's a vertical line. Now, there's no such thing as above or below in this case, but if you think about it, think about this. It's not going to be above or below a vertical line. It's going to be to the right or to the left. What values are less than 3? Well, look to the left of the line. What value is this? 2, 1, 0, 1. So everything to the left is less than 3, right? Okay, example 3b, what variable is missing here? The x is missing, so we have no choice but to solve for y. So we get y is greater than -3. Now, guys, this looks a lot like the first part of the chapter. The first part of the chapter, we would graph it and we'd graph on a number line. But because the direction says graph on a coordinate plane, we're going to graph on a coordinate plane. Okay, and don't forget, because we divided by a negative number, we have to flip the symbol. So that's a less than -3. Now, what kind of line is this going to be? A horizontal and a dotted line at -3. Now, in this case, we will have above or below. So, do we shade above or below? Less than below. Okay? Example 4, a yearbook company promises to give the junior class a picnic if they spend at least $28,000 on yearbooks and class rings. Each yearbook costs $35 and each class ring costs $140. How many yearbooks and class rings must the junior class buy to get their picnic? Okay, we have two different things, don't we? We have yearbooks and class rings. So we're going to have two variables, right? Normally, what I read first, I usually give my x, and what I read second, I give my y. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Sometimes I will tell you what variable to use, but if I don't tell you, then you tell me. The first thing I read was yearbook, so I'm going to let x equals the number of yearbooks. And I'm going to let y be the number of class rings. You have to identify what each variable stands for. So right here, each yearbook costs $35. How many yearbooks did I buy? X. So that's going to be 35x. Plus, each ring costs 140. Do I know how many rings I buy? Y. But I know that as a group, we need to spend at least $28,000. Can we spend more than $28,000? Can we spend exactly $28,000? So the symbol would be greater than or equal to $28,000. So there is the equation. Now, we have 3 different ways we can graph. Make a table, x and y intercepts, slope-intercept form. When we have big numbers like this, putting it in slope-intercept form would not be the smartest way to graph. What do y'all think would be the easiest way to graph? X and y intercepts, definitely. That means to find the y-intercept, we let x equal 0, solve for y. To find the x-intercept, we let y equal 0, solve for x. So if I'm going to let x equal 0, that's 35 times 0 plus 140y. Now when you go to find the intercept, you just put it equal to 28,000. So that's 140y is equal to 28,000. Divide by 120. Now, a calculator definitely comes in handy. 28,000 divided by 140 is 200. So y is equal to 200. So when we want to find what x is, when y is 0, so that's 35x is equal to 28,000. Again, a calculator comes in handy. And I get 800. So x is equal to 800. Okay, now it's time to graph. I have to label. My horizontal axis is my x-axis. What does that stand for?
The yearbooks.
Number of yearbooks. You must label number of yearbooks. And my vertical axis is my y. That stands for number of rings. Now we have to figure out, are we going to count by ones? So I'm going to label my horizontal axis. I'm going to count by 100, so I'm going to label each one, every other one, just to make it look a little nicer. Now, do I have to count my vertical axis by the exact same thing that I counted my horizontal? No, you don't. You don't have to be, it does not. I'm going to erase this to give me some more room so I can read it. So I'm going to count by 25s and I'm going to label every other one. Okay, so plot 0, 200, and 800, 0. And then I can graph. Now when I go to draw my line, will I have arrows? No, because there's no such thing as negative. So this is just what's called a line segment. Now I have to shade. Go back to the original problem. And what is my inequality? It's a greater than. So I'm going to shade above the line. So that means, can I spend more than 28,000? Absolutely. I just cannot spend less than 28,000. Randy writes and edits short articles for local newspaper. It takes him an hour to write an article and about a half hour to edit an article. If Randy works up to 8 hours a day, how many articles can he write and edit in one day? So what is X going to stand for? Number of hours you spend writing. And Y stands for the number of hours editing. So, how long does it take them to write one article? An hour, meaning 1 hour. So that would be 1x plus, how long does it take for him to edit? 30 minutes. So I put 30y. So that's this is all we have to be consistent in time. That means 1 hour, 1x plus 30y, meaning 30 hours. You have to be consistent. You can't talk about 1 hour, 1 minute, and minutes the next. So 30 would not work. What would we need to write? 1/2. Okay, you have to be consistent with hours. Can't be hours for X and minutes for Y. Now, it can work up to 8 hours. Can he work less than 8 hours? Sure. Can he work exactly 8 hours? Sure, he just cannot work more than that. So there's the equation. Now, these are small enough numbers that you could put in slope-intercept form if you wanted to. Or you could find your X and Y intercepts. Which is the easiest? How many points does it take to make a line? 2. So when you have something this broad, finding the X and Y intercepts, I think, would be the easiest. Let X equal 0. When X equals 0, that's 1/2 Y is equal to 8. We multiply both sides by 2. So what is Y equal to? 16. And when Y is 0, that's X is equal to 8. Okay, what does our horizontal axis stand for? Label your graph right now. Okay, the horizontal is the number of hours writing, which is your x-axis. I counted by ones. But the y, the vertical, is number of editing. And I have to go all the way to 16, so what am I going to count by? 2's. So here's 0, 16, and here's 8, 0. Draw your line. We're going to shade below. That means we can work less than 8 hours. We just cannot work more than 8 hours. And that is the end of section 5.6.